All right, I'd like to call to order the Board of Education Finance Committee meeting for Monday, January 26, 2026. Item number 2 is public comment. I do not see anyone here for public comment. Item number 3 is approval of the minutes for December 15th, 2025. Bonnie, did you receive any correction requests? Do we have any at this time? No? Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from December 15th. A second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved. Item number 4, discussion and consideration. We have the longitudinal transportation planning presentation tonight. Anyone want to make any comments before
Yeah, we're going to turn it over to
starting?
Todd. I don't know if you have anything, but we'll turn it over to Matt Johnson from
All right.
Transportation to give us a go. Keep it nice and close to your face so they can hear you on TV.
Yes, I was given specific instructions.
Okay, good. See? You see, I'm trying to do my specific instructions as well.
All right. So the goals of this presentation are to go over the status of transportation, our fuel types and their performance, industry comparisons, proposed fleet schedule, and just a general summary. So at Geneva, the men and women of our transportation department provide service for transporting 3,235 students at 1,194 bus stops, driving over 2,170.5 miles daily to ensure students arrive for education and return safely to their homes. Driving students is not just an occupation, it is a career fostered with dedication and care. So this is our team. Obviously myself on there. Then we have Kendall, our administrative assistant, Brandy, our assistant director of transportation, Kelly, our routing and planning supervisor, and our 2 mechanics, Jeremy and Fidel. And then this is just a couple of our many drivers that we have. We have Curtis and Sydney, who both drive 30 passenger buses for the St. Peter's routes, Jeannie, who drives a 30 passenger special needs route, and Stacy, who drives one of the large 72 in-district routes.
How many total drivers?
We have currently 62 total drivers. All right, so for safety and training, we have different safety measures that they are required to enact, such things as going over pre-trips inspections of the buses all the time, and we do structured training. We do monthly trainings with the drivers to make sure that they are staying up to date and with current news. Anytime there is an incident, we do try to manage that and cover those in topics for our safety meetings, but we also address those specifically with those drivers to see what went wrong and what we can improve on, and retraining is necessary. We do try to incentivize some accident mitigation to try and prevent that and be proactive in that area. And then we do try to do proactive maintenance to try and keep breakdowns to a minimum as possible, but not everything unfortunately can be predicted. So, with fleet replacement, we're trying to maximize the value of our vehicles and maintain safety while finding that kind of sweet spot with the available funds as to how long we can get the buses to last while not costing us too much in repairs. Maintenance, getting them the training in parts availability and proactive inspection and end work. Anytime there's training that they provide from the manufacturers, we try to get them out there so that they can stay up to date on what's going on with the new buses. Parts availability is kind of hit or miss. As stuff starts to become like a common problem with buses, then availability obviously goes down because everybody's looking for those. For planning, we try to keep our route and bus stops as efficient as possible, but also as safe as possible. One of our big things we've been trying to do over the course of several years, and we're getting close to, is getting bus stops to corner stops instead of doing individualized house stops. And obviously with that routing and with the corner stops, it does help with the safety. Cars and public are more expecting of a school bus to stop at a corner than they are at somebody's driveway to pick up a student. And then training, the health and well-being and bus maintenance awareness and use of equipment. We go over this, like I said, once a month. At the beginning of the year, we do a hands-on training and a full day training going over all of our protocols just to make sure all of our drivers are still up to date on everything. So, the Propane Education and Research Council found that propane-powered buses emit virtually zero particulate matter, reduce nitric oxide emissions by 96%, and have engines that run 90% cleaner than mandated EPA standards. Per Bluebird's findings, propane also wins on cost per mile. Without factoring in grants or incentives, here's how the four fuel options kind of compare. So these are just a national average. Propane is at about $1.20 a gallon usually, or $1.01 per mile. Diesel is $3.50 per gallon at $1.21 per mile. Gas is $3.25 per gallon, or $1.26 per mile. And electric is at about 12 kilowatts an hour, or $2.25 per mile. So this is a little bit about our specific fleet. So from July to December, we had about a total of 51 different breakdowns that took the buses out of commission. Only 6 of those were newer buses that either had something that was covered under warranty, but that's kind of come to be expected. As fast as they break these buses out and build them, there's bound to be some problems that they have to take care of. But you'll notice that 45 of those breakdowns were all the diesel buses. As they're beginning to age, we're starting to get into more breakdowns and more expensive breakdowns. Unlike electrification, which typically requires a significant infrastructure investment, specialized technician training, and pristine maintenance conditions, using propane is very similar to using gasoline. Whaley said propane buses can cost up to 10% more than a diesel bus, but when looking at the total cost of ownership, school districts will still spend less to operate propane buses versus diesel. And what we found at the moment right now is propane buses are costing about the same as a diesel bus. They're not even costing more. Fuel performance. So this is our actual fuel performance versus the national. So we're paying about $2.03 a gallon for unleaded. Diesel is about $2.44, and propane is $1.85 is what we're paying. The unleaded buses are averaging 5 to 6 miles per gallon. Diesels are averaging about 6 to 7, and propanes are averaging about 4 to 7 miles per gallon. In a maintenance survey, propane is gaining popularity as it grew 46% in usage from the previous years. This points to an increased alternate fuel adoption. As we all know, everybody's trying to kind of get away from diesel now and move on to other things. Fleet buses are getting younger, with a national average of 8.3 years old. The average age reported this year, it hasn't been that low in nearly 15 years, and the average retirement age dropping down by 1 year as well. The diversified fleets are on the rise, getting all types of bus types, and the number of buses maintained increased in the year. So basically what that's saying is that districts are starting to branch out, and instead of putting all their eggs in one manufacturer, they're spreading out, because as we saw, especially with COVID, when we had everything all in one, all in international, it becomes very hard to get parts when they're struggling. In line with other recent data, the driver shortage is lessening, at least in terms of maintenance techs having to step in and cover routes. This year, 32% of fleets said their techs said they have never had to get behind the wheel, up from 25% last year. Our techs have yet to set foot behind the wheel, thankfully, and we'd like to try and keep it that way. One completely unchanged data point from previous years are parts and equipment prices, with no respondents witnessing any relief in cost. Not surprisingly, parts prices and availability also made the top concern reported. That's kind of nationwide for everything at this point. Prices are just going up and stuff's getting harder to find. So the top challenges that have been reported in school bus maintenance are parts availability, driver tech shortage, various others, fleet age, cost or budget, electrical issues, time and or training, outsourced maintenance, and emissions. You can see parts availability is still the #1 issue. The top challenge in transporting special needs students is driver and age shortage. While it is getting better, there is still that shortage of getting people that want to come in and do this type of career. Communication, behavior, bell times and midday trips, lack of spare buses, training, and funding costs and resources. So that communication and behavior is, the communication is they're saying there's issues with communications between the schools or between transportation and other departments, wherever that may be. The behavior of the kids is becoming an increased issue as the laws change. We have to try and adapt, and where we might find a student that is not safe to transport on the bus, we're kind of being forced with that. We have to figure something out situation. Bell times and midday trips are becoming increasingly difficult. Again, this is national. We've been very fortunate that hasn't really become an issue here, but it is a national problem. All right, fuel types that are maintained. So on a national level, diesel is still one of the highest out there. It's 48.7% of people are maintaining diesel engines. 31.5% are gasoline, 11% is propane, 6.6% is electric, and 1.5% is CNG, which is compressed natural gas. Fleets are getting younger, as you can see in 2020 there. The average was about 9.1 years. In 2021, it went up a little bit and progressed up into 22. Then in 23 dropped to 8.8, went back up for a hair, and now we're back down to 8.3. We're the youngest we have been in quite some time. So the average fleet composition in the nation is 74% school buses and 26% other vehicles. That would be like short white buses or minivans or SUVs to get kids to and from school. Average school bus retirement age for a small bus has been 13 years and a large has been 14 years, with annual miles averaging about 15,800. An average number of maintenance bays to maintain those is 9, with the average number of buses per technician at 19, and the percentage of fleets employing at least one female tech is 1%. For us specifically, our fleet consists of 94% school buses and only 6% other vehicles. We try to stay with the school buses because they are generally considered the safer mode of transportation on the road. The average school bus retirement age for our fleet at this time is for both small and large buses is 7 years, which is well below the national average. We put on an annual miles of about 8,600 miles per bus. We have 2 maintenance bays, and our average buses per technician is 41, which is significantly higher, but we're also getting rid of our buses sooner, so it's a little bit of a give and take there. And then obviously, as you saw, we have no females out working in the shop. So the number of school buses maintained on a national level is about 35% is a small fleet for 1 to 24 passenger. 23% are 25 to 49. Oh, sorry, I'm reading that wrong. That's the total number of buses. Yeah. I lost my train of thought there. So 35% are maintaining about 1 to 24 buses. 23% are maintaining 25 to 49. 10% are maintaining 50 to 89. 18% are at 100 to 299, and 12% have fleets that are 300 or more. We fall into that 10% category where we're maintaining a 50 to 99. The average fleet composition is 74% school buses and 26% other, as we said earlier. About the national average is about only 28% of people are buying used buses. Majority, 72%, are buying new buses. There's just, it's that you don't know what the person before you did kind of a thing, so it's kind of hit or miss. 59% say they use a maintenance software to maintain and keep up with their fleet. And 41% say no, we do have a maintenance software that the mechanics use so that we can keep track and break down what are our more costly buses. And then have you seen a spike in parts prices? Obviously that answer is going to be yes ever since COVID hit. Special needs ridership this year versus last year, 46% of people said they stayed the same. 51% said they increased, and 3% said they decreased over this year from last year. The average percentage of buses in fleet primarily transporting special needs students on a national is 15%, with the average percentage of riders with special needs being 21%, and the average percentage of special needs riders who use a wheelchair 8%, and the average percentage of school-to-home special needs bus stops at 90%. Special needs drivers generally, 93%, have the same pay rate as general education drivers. This year, pay was the most equitable since 2021, with a jump from last year's 88%. Over half of operators, 57.8%, reported having aides in attendance on board all of their special needs buses, up from last year's results of 49%. Fewer special needs buses are left with no aides this year, 11.9%, compared to last year's 16%. So specifically for us, the average percentage of buses in the fleet primarily transporting special needs students is 41%, with an average rider with special needs being 3.5%, and the average percentage of riders who use a wheelchair being 2.5%. That average percent of riders with special needs being 3.5% is so low is because of that is compared to our regular education students. So only 3.5% of the students are actually what would qualify as special needs. But because we go to so many different schools and outplacements, our fleet is about 41% special needs buses or various buses that transport them to their special needs locations. Special needs drivers in our district make $1 more an hour than the general education drivers. And 17% of our special needs buses do have monitors on board. That is because we do monitors a little bit differently than some other districts, is we do them on a need-by-need basis. So the IEP team determines if they actually need a monitor on the bus before we put one on there. We don't put a monitor on every single bus. And this is the replacement timeline in our ideal world. Obviously, with money constraints and stuff like that coming up, this may not be, and we may have to adjust. But ideally, we would like to replace close to 6 of the 72 passenger buses each year and 4 of the 34 passengers to kind of try and keep them on a 7 to 8 year rotation. Yep.
You start in 27. What about 26? What is your plans for 26 this year?
Plans for 26 for this year is we may not be getting any. We had some buses that were on delay from a previous year that did arrive and kind of ate up that budget from the 26. So during the summer of this past year, we got in a total of about 22 buses, which is way above what we normally order. But it's just because it were all stuff that had been ordered previously but were on delay. So because of that, our 26 budget is kind of eaten up there.
But we also have a big chunk of our fleet is now new.
That is correct.
Right.
A
So
very large chunk of our fleet is now brand new and less to be concerned about. School bus market, we're obviously seeing a rising cost in school buses regardless of the passenger size. It just keeps going up with the new seatbelt law being implemented and everybody getting ready for that. Fuel, tire, batteries, and electronics are all going up. And building a core of dedicated drivers committed to a profession is hard to find. Bumps in the road we've seen, like I just said, the seatbelt law that is now being, I can't remember the year now. I think it's 27 they're mandating it put into place now. The competitive market between public and private, and then weather, which is an uncontrollable, which causes delays, road construction, and all kinds of different things that cause delays that end up being bumps in the road. And how we get there is by training our trainers and our staff and keeping everybody up to date as best as we can, trying to balance the fleet by using our ability to buy fleet needed for the right period of time, and having a mixed fuel source to weather the market, and then a competitive fair driver training and compensation package, and fitting the right driver to the right route, and routes for AM, PM, and special events and curricular athletics and that sort.
With your parts and service,
Yes,
you have there, you obviously know what your critical parts are.
correct.
And do you keep an inventory of the critical parts so that you don't have to, wait and in case they're not available, you can at least repair the buses that break down on an ongoing basis? And
We
then
do.
Replace those?
We do, yes. We try to keep, it depends on the critical part. Obviously, more expensive critical parts, we might only keep a couple on stock because of how expensive they are, where the lesser, more critical ones, we'll keep a bunch of them on the shelf. We try to keep a 10% of on stock of the fleet. So if there's a diesel bus and we've got 20 buses, we try to keep on hand anywhere from 2 to 5 of the parts, depending on what it is. That way, if they go down, we can quickly fix them and get them back on the road. In summary, our safety starts with hiring the best drivers, detailed training on equipment and operations, dependence that other drivers on the road will be safe and alert, and a support team that maintains, plans, prepares, and monitors our vehicles, drivers, and routes. Any questions?
Paul, you have
Yeah, just one question on the
Yeah.
parts again.
Mhm.
Is it like with cars, you run the risk of buying non-OEM type parts?
Mhm.
You find you got to be careful about that. What about for school buses? Is that an issue, or is it always up from the original manufacturer?
It's not as big of an issue. The market for non-OEM stuff is significantly smaller for school buses. When there are shortages, we have had to reach out to those non-OEM areas where we can get them, but for the most part, it is all OEM equivalent. Yeah.
I had one thing when I was going through the slides. I appreciate all the information about the propane buses and what you've seen with those, because you can't go anywhere today without hearing about electric vehicles and infrastructure and charging. And our district doesn't qualify for a lot of the incentives that some districts have to purchase those types of buses. Have you heard any feedback from your peers about how those have been going on the road, especially with the cold weather recently? Because I've been thinking about that, because sometimes they cost so much more, but there's also so much more that you have to do compared to the propane buses that we've bought. You showed us that they've been a good return on our investment so far.
Yes. So every month we have a meeting of directors in Kane County. Last month, that was the hot topic of our question, because West Aurora, as you guys probably know, got 26 electric buses through a grant. After talking with them, their first electric bill was very high, but they don't have enough data quite to compare yet to figure out what exactly, if it's any cost savings or not. They are able to do all their routes, and they're getting about what the manufacturers recommended, which is about 85 miles per bus, which means for them, they're trying to keep them on very specific routes because they got a much larger area than we do. What they did find, though, is as they use some of those extra features like heaters and stuff like that, is it drains the battery significantly quicker. They do not heat up quite as well as a standard diesel, gas, or propane bus from the heaters, because they're electric heaters versus being actual coolant driven ones. And so their temperatures are a little bit lower. It's still warm enough for the kids. Have not heard yet what it was like during this most recent couple of deep freeze days. I'll ask that question at our next one and get back to you. But they have been telling their drivers that because it burns up so much that if needed, turn off your heaters in between having kids on the buses, which is not ideal for anybody because now you have a freezing driver on the bus. So all in all, they're not unhappy with what they got. Still waiting for a little bit more data to get some more information for you guys regarding those though.
That'd be helpful. Yeah. Given time so that they can use them a little bit longer. I'd just be curious. We can electrify other areas of our fleet if we wanted to. Maybe the school buses aren't the right one for us.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a little more information about our fleet. So first of all, thank you to Matt and Brandy for the leadership at the Transportation Center. So for example, this summer we bought a new driver's ed vehicle. And so when you see the other fleet, we're moving the vans out to that location to take smaller groups. Ensemble's got to go somewhere. It doesn't make sense taking a bus. It makes sense taking a smaller van. Even if people want to go to PD, take professional development someplace else, they can contact the transportation department. If the bus is not available, they can use, I'm sorry, not the bus, but if the van's not available, they can take a van someplace else. So we're trying to use that for multi-purpose. And I think going forward, we added a second propane tank from our original plan out at the transportation center. And I'll leave it up to Matt and Brandy to figure out like what is our breaking point for our propane fleet. We only have so much space out there that we can put additional tanks, and that kind of will identify where the proper size and number of propane buses will fit for our fleet. Overall, we've been really good about managing that, and I think we just learned, with this cold weather, that what our propane fleet is like. They're supposed to. We bought them knowing that they heat up right away. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit. Between the drivers. And, I think there's a little seniority too about who got the propane buses. That was one of the selling features, right? Different alternative energy source, but also that we could heat them up right away and go get our kids because we're not driving somewhere on a farther rural route. We're picking up here in town, which is a quick pickup. So anything else you want to add, Matt, or anything?
Yeah. So as you said, like the propane bus is heating up. Even in these deep freeze days, they were warmed up and ready to go within 10 minutes, where the diesel buses, when we got them started, they were going, but the heat was not built up yet until we got going for a while. So having those is really nice. The drivers love them. The gas mileage is pretty close to where we're hoping they would be. Depends on the driver.
All right. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 5, future agenda items. We don't have anything on there. Item 6, items for recommendation to the full board. Nothing there for today. Information legislative update. I don't have anything. Dr. Barrett, anything related?
No,
Plans?
mostly lots of bills kind of being talked about and coming out, but not a lot of action at this point in the session, so early.
Yeah. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.